I've been sitting here testing out the Vexed set of gear for a while, and I just figured out something about the 6-piece Vexed set that is very confusing unless you actually spend some time to test this. So the Vexed set, let's talk about how good it is. First of all, what it does is it's on a 30-second cooldown if you have the full, yes, 30 seconds if you have the full 6-piece. And what it effectively does is does an AoE shout, which does damage and also increases the movement and attack speed of your summons by 24%. Now, you might wonder to yourself, does summons count things like the Echoing Shade? Yes, it does. These are also summons. However, you're going to notice something, and this is the point of the video here. When I actually use the Echoing Shade, it is not using the Vex. Do you realize that? Now watch, I use the the Mage. No Vex. No Vex is proccing at all. So it might be rather confusing when you're having summons show up and the Vex is not proccing and you're not getting the attack speed buff. However, watch what happens, okay, if we go over to this little guy and just enter into combat. So now that we are technically in a combat scenario, when a summon happens, and look, I just did the shout right there, even including splitting the golems, or including the Echoing Shade showing up, or including the manual summons, or even, this also counts, if I go to skills and I have command skeletons and I put it here, the passive summons of the skeletons actually are rising up like this will also count in terms of activating the ability. So that is one of the most confusing things about the set that is not explained. The set itself does not activate or get triggered unless you're actually in the battle. Now, you might wonder why this is. It's actually kind of nice. It's because of stuff like what just happened on the screen, which is that you might have summons randomly happening when you're not in combat. And if you have the ability to get used outside of combat, then it will waste the cooldown. So this is actually kind of a nice quality of life feature. Now, another interesting mechanic to take note of when you're using this is that any creature that you had already summoned when the Vexed shout happens will be buffed, but any creature after will not be. So let me give you an example. I summon a mage, that mage gets summoned, therefore it procs the shout, which happened after the summon, therefore the one I just summoned is now increased the attack speed. You can see it just fell off and you can see the attack speed differences associated with that. However, any mage that I would have summoned directly afterwards would not get that attack speed bonus. Let me show you. So for instance, if I go into combat here and I summon the mage, that one's instantly going to have the attack speed bonus, but if I summon another mage right after it, or any other creatures after it, they're not going to be getting that same attack speed bonus, even though it's within the 6 seconds of timer that my shout is active. The shout is only active for people that are alive during the time of the shout. Now, in terms of actual attack speed buffs, it's on the lower end. For instance, Shepherd will give you 60%, and if you look at the active bonus from Skeletons, it's 80%. Whereas the Vexed here only is 24% movement and attack speed, and very often the movement speed doesn't matter because if you're attacking, you're holding still as a summon. And it's arguable the shout doesn't do as much damage as you might think. It's really not that hard hitting of a crit, and damage done by summons being reduced is pretty unfortunate. So the scenario in which the best piece that you rode that also you could get Vexed on, that also doesn't have a bad bonus effect, is fairly rare. However, if you do manage to land it, what you can notice is that it does actually stack with the other attack speed bonuses, meaning in an ideal world, if you could have the proper negative bonuses, this curse set could actually be quite good on the Necromancer. The problem is I have primary attack damage reduced, summon damage reduced on multiple pieces of these, so I probably would do more damage overall if I literally just didn't even have this set. Something I do quite like, however, is that it is passively activated. So if I do go and either have an Echoing Shade get summoned, or if I even have the Command Skeleton get summoned passively, it will automatically do that shout, allowing that damage to be mindless when you are farming. In my testing with approximately 10,000 damage, I was doing approximately 40,000 damage with an orange crit with the shout. So that was comparable to instance to a full Bone Spike with no modifier cast. They were around approximately the exact same damage. So if you get a world in which you're only having the healing potion cooldown or something like that on the negative, this would actually increase your overall burst damage, both from the roar as well as the movement and attack speed would help you as well. So I could see this being paired with something like Guided by Maggot's Pants to really have a heavy attack speed build. But if you have to absorb multiple summons reduced damage in order to get there, I don't think the overall damage reduction will be worth the small additional attack speed and bonus proc every 30 seconds of damage, unfortunately. So be very careful when you are selecting your cursed gear. While there's not very many other options for the Necromancer at the moment, I do believe I would almost rather have a wired bonus or perhaps a lashed bonus of primary attack. I have used both of these in order to get significantly easier damage without having to worry about the opportunity cost of summoning a minion. And I most definitely will actually be re-rolling the cursed gear pieces off of the ones with damage summons. I'd rather have a 4-piece, but get 8% of my damage back from summons, as I have multiple 4-piece damage reductions on summons. So once again, cursed gear comes down to, it's kind of nice. I don't mind it. I actually like some of the benefits. It's useful sometimes, and I could see it being good in certain builds. However, the problem is always with the negatives that come with cursed gear, and it's very difficult to get past those. However, that is a problem for literally all cursed gear. As far as this set goes, it does seem decently viable, at least for summons, as long as you understand the mechanics around it only working during an actual fight. Also, you have the added benefit if it works for your Echoing Shade and not just Necromancer summons, so I suppose if you were like a monk or something with Mystic Allies, you could arguably use it as well. And since it does work off Echoing Shade, you literally don't even have to use things like Mystic Allies to proc this if what you actually wanted was to just get the 6-piece roar effect in order to get additional burst damage. You could cheese your way into having AoE burst damage with this. Whereas all the other cursed effects are either damage done over time or a counter type of effect or damage reduced to you with the buff skill, etc. Vexed actually increases damage instantly. You get a burst of damage. It is like a cast sort of ability with the roar. So it is front-loaded damage as paired to the majority of these other ones are back-loaded continual damage over time. So while the movement and attack speed might not seem that exciting, actually having the 130% AoE almost feels like a worse version of these Winston's Haunting. It's actually not too bad in terms of AoE damage, and since it's off of your damage, it will scale with your damage as you get stronger. I would think that while the roar damage is good, the only part that's a little bit unimpressed for me is the 24% attack speed isn't that big of a buff, considering things like Skeletons gets 80% with just the press of a button, or we even have 60% off of things like the Shepherd's outfit. Granted, this is a 6-piece set, but a 24% is a very small attack speed buff. So my take on it is if you get negative properties that aren't too bad, then you can use the set as long as you aren't having like your summon damage reduced or really key properties getting destroyed, like beneficial effect duration or something like that decrease. If you are doing some attack speed type of build, you also might not need all of that attack speed. You might already have Guided by Maggots. You might already have the passive ability from Skeleton. If you're using Skeleton, you'll have it for free. So there might be other ways in which you're getting your attack speed. You don't necessarily need the attack speed. However, if you're doing a full summon, single target damage, like Skeleton Archer type of build or something, I don't actually see the roar being that bad. So I do think it is somewhat viable. You just have to get the right negative properties. That's my opinion of it, though. Feel free to leave your opinion down below. I'd love to see some other opinions of people that have tried it. Consider liking or subscribing to this channel to see more Diablo Immortal guides and content.